When I first pulled my brand new Ferrari SF90 Spider into the cul-de-sac of Pinehurst Estates, I didn't expect it to sound like an explosion. The twin-turbo engine roared through the quiet morning like a lion among house cats. Curtains flew open. Lawns went silent. And there, across the street, stood Isabella Jones, the self-proclaimed queen of the HOA, with her arms folded lips, pursed eyes narrowing like she'd just spotted a crime. Right beside her, her 6-year-old unemployed son Hunter stared at my car in disbelief, then screamed, voice cracking, "Mom, I want that for free, why does he get one?" I smiled, thinking it was just another jealous outburst. I had no idea that moment would ignite a neighborhood war of envy lies and HOA madness, one that would end with police lights, lawsuits, and poetic justice served hotter than the Ferrari's exhaust. Before we dive in, tell me where you're watching from city and local time, and don't forget to subscribe for more insane real-life HOA revenge stories. For most of my life, I lived with one rule: work quietly, let success make the noise. And for 39 years, that principle had guided everything I did, from building my first startup out of a leaky apartment to selling it a decade later for more money than I ever thought I'd see in my lifetime. So when the acquisition deal finally cleared and the last line of code I ever wrote turned into 7 figures, I promised myself one simple thing: I would finally live without stress, without bosses, without deadlines. That's how I ended up in Pinehurst Estates, a manicured suburban paradise with pristine lawns, pastel houses, and neighbors who greeted each other with robotic smiles that said, "I'm watching you, but welcome." The streets looked like a magazine cover, the kind that made you believe peace could be bought along with your mortgage. I moved in with my dog Max, planning to work on classic cars, plant a small garden, and maybe, just maybe, make some decent friends who didn't speak in quarterly revenue reports. The first week went well. I met retirees who waved from golf carts, couples jogging with matching tracksuits, even a friendly family next door who brought me cookies. Then came Isabella Jones. She introduced herself like she was auditioning for a political ad blazer, perfectly pressed sunglasses on, even in the shade. "Welcome to Pinehurst, Mr. Adams," she said, smiling just enough to show her teeth but not her soul. "I'm the president of the HOA, so if you have any questions about our community standards, you can always come to me." It sounded friendly enough, until she followed it with, "We like to keep things uniform around here. Sample car quiet nights, modest living. That's what makes our neighborhood special." I nodded politely, though. The warning behind her words was clear: don't stand out, don't shine too bright. Then I met her son Hunter, 26, messy hair, faded hoodie, and the permanent expression of someone who believes the world wronged him. When Isabella introduced him, he barely looked up from his phone. "Cool, another tech guy," he muttered. "You people ruin everything." At first I laughed it off. Maybe he was joking. But in the following days, Hunter's presence became as constant as the sound of his gaming headset echoing through the street. He didn't work, didn't study, just drifted between his mother's front porch and his online fantasy world, while Isabella made excuses for him at every HOA meeting. Despite all that, I genuinely tried to blend in. I attended the HOA barbecue, paid my fees early, even complimented Isabella on her efficient rule enforcement. But there was something in her tone whenever she said community that always felt more like control. And yet for a few months, life was good. My days filled with long drives along the coast, tinkering in the garage and planning small upgrades to my home. I didn't brag, didn't host parties, didn't cause trouble. I kept to myself, which ironically was the very thing that seemed to bother Isabella most. You see, people like her crave 2 things, attention and authority. And when you don't feed either, they start inventing reasons to get involved. It started small. A knock on my door one morning. "Mr. Adams," she said, clipboard in hand. "We noticed your trash bins were out an hour past collection time yesterday." "I was out of town," I explained. "Rules are rules," she said, writing something down anyway. Next came an email warning me that my grass appeared unusually vibrant, possibly due to unapproved fertilizer. I stared at the screen, half laughing, half incredulous. I had lived in tech startups for years, where people burned millions chasing ideas that didn't exist, but this was the first time I saw someone try to regulate the color of grass. Still, I let it slide. You don't argue with small minds armed with big clipboards. Then came that day, the day I brought home the car. To me, it wasn't just a car. It was a symbol of everything I'd worked for, every risk I'd taken, every failure that had taught me something. The Ferrari SF90 Spider, a twin-turbo V8 hybrid with 986 horsepower, wasn't just fast, it was a rolling reminder that the kid who once coded in a coffee shop had made it. The delivery truck pulled up mid-morning. I stood there like a teenager on Christmas morning as the driver carefully rolled the car down the ramp, sunlight catching the metallic red paint like liquid fire. The entire street seemed to pause. Lawnmowers went silent. Curtains lifted. Even the wind seemed to stop to admire it. And then, of course, she appeared. Isabella stood across the street, sunglasses off, now her eyes narrowing with the kind of judgment only HOA presidents and airport security officers possess. Hunter followed barefoot, holding a bag of chips, staring like he'd just seen a spaceship. One of the kids from down the block pointed and yelled, "Whoa, that's a Ferrari." Their mom smiled, taking a photo. A few neighbors clapped. But Isabella's face remained frozen, her jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. She walked over slowly, every step rehearsed. "Beautiful car, Mr. Adams," she said, her tone colder than her pearls. "Quite extravagant for this neighborhood." "Thank you," I replied, still grinning. "It's been a dream of mine for years." "Yes," she said softly. "Dreams can be dangerous. They make people forget where they are." Before I could respond, Hunter blurted out, "Bet it's leased. Guys like you always fake it." "Hunter," she hissed, slapping his arm, but the smirk on her face didn't match the scolding tone. I laughed it off, told them to have a nice day, and turned back to admire the car. But as I looked at its reflection in the chrome, I caught something else in that same mirror, the look Isabella gave me when she thought I wasn't watching. It wasn't envy, it was possession. Like she believed my success somehow belonged to her neighborhood, that I owed something to her imaginary social order. That evening, I received my first HOA reminder email. Residents are encouraged to keep the community atmosphere balanced and modest. Excessive displays of wealth may attract unwanted attention. I leaned back in my chair, rereading the line twice, half amused, half disgusted. It wasn't about balance, it was about control. And people like Isabella hated nothing more than someone they couldn't control. So I ignored it. Took the Ferrari for a drive along the coastline, top-down engine singing against the sunset. For a few minutes I felt unstoppable, free. When I returned, I noticed Isabella's curtains moving again. The light from her living room flickered silhouettes of her and Hunter arguing inside. I couldn't hear the words, but I could imagine them. And as I parked the Ferrari in my driveway, I had no idea that this quiet street, this perfect little suburb, was about to turn into the stage for one of the most ridiculous HOA battles in history, one that would test my patience, my sense of humor, and my ability to stay calm when two people decided they deserved what I'd earned. Because in Pinterest, estate's success wasn't celebrated, it was investigated. It started as one of those perfect mornings when life feels lighter than usual. The sun was sharp, the air clean, and my coffee just right. I was standing in the driveway adjusting my watch when I saw the delivery truck turn onto my street. My car had finally arrived. I'd waited months for it, the Ferrari SF90 Spider, tailor-made in Italy, with a carbon fiber interior and deep metallic red paint that shimmered between crimson and gold under sunlight. Even the delivery driver handled it like a newborn child. The moment its tires touched the concrete, a quiet hum spread through the street. Then the silence shattered. Lawnmowers went off. Doors opened. Curtains lifted. Within 5 minutes, half the neighborhood was watching. Some with admiration, others with the kind of quiet envy that sits heavy behind fake smiles. The first to appear naturally was Isabella Jones. She stepped out of her front door in her signature beige suit and oversized sunglasses, like she'd been waiting for this day just to find something to complain about. Following close behind was Hunter, wearing a torn hoodie, pajama pants, and an expression that perfectly mixed confusion and resentment. "Morning," I said, cheerfully waving at them. Isabella didn't wave back. She just looked at the car, tilted her head slightly, and said in a tone that could curdle milk, "Well, that's certainly eye-catching, Mr. Adams." Hunter shoved his hands into his pockets and muttered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Looks rented." I laughed it off. "Nope, all mine." The delivery driver handed me the paperwork and I signed with a grin. "Would you like to hear it?" I asked. I pressed the start button. The engine roared, a deep, throaty growl that rolled through every house on the block. Kids cheered. Even some of the older neighbors smiled and clapped. But Isabella's face stayed stone, still lips, pursed eyes narrowed. When the sound faded, she said quietly, "We try to maintain a peaceful environment in Pinterest, Mr. Adams. I do hope your toy doesn't disturb the harmony." "Of course," I replied, forcing a polite smile. "I'll make sure to keep it quiet when it's parked." Hunter chuckled mockingly. "Good one. But seriously, why'd you waste money on that? You could have helped out the community instead." I glanced at him. "Help the community?" How he shrugged. "I don't know. Donations." "You're rich, right?" Isabella cut in before I could respond. "Hunter, enough. Then to me, you'll have to forgive him. He's passionate about fairness. I nearly laughed at that. Fairness was not the word I'd use to describe a 26-year-old man who hadn't worked a day in his life, but somehow felt entitled to my success. That night, I thought the spectacle was over. I parked the Ferrari neatly in the garage, made dinner, and scrolled through some car enthusiast forums. But around 9 p.m., I got a notification my neighborhood's Facebook group had a new post. It read, "Residents have noticed unusual luxury items being delivered to certain homes. Please remember that Pinehurst Estates values modest living and transparency. Sudden wealth without explanation can attract the wrong kind of attention." The post was signed, HOA President Isabella Jones. I actually laughed out loud. Sudden wealth without explanation. I'd spent 15 years grinding 16-hour days for that car. But to Isabella, that didn't matter if she didn't understand it. It had to be suspicious. Still, I ignored it. The next morning, though, the situation escalated. I was watering my plants when a police cruiser rolled into the cul-de-sac. 2 officers stepped out. My stomach sank, not because I'd done anything wrong, but because I already knew who had called. "Mr. Adams," one asked, "we received a report about possible illegal activity tied to your recent purchase." I almost laughed. "Illegal? You mean the Ferrari?" The older officer nodded apologetically. "It's a routine check. Someone in your HOA suggested you might be involved in unusual financial behavior." "Unusual financial behavior," I repeated. "You mean having a job?" The younger cop chuckled. "We'll just need to verify a few things, sir." I led them inside, handed them my ID business registration and the sale contract for my startup. They looked it over, whistled, and smiled. "Everything checks out," the older officer said. "Sorry about the trouble. You've got some nosy neighbors, huh?" I nodded. One in particular. As they left the patrol car past Isabella's house. She was standing behind her window blinds, pretending to water a plant that was clearly plastic. Hunter stood beside her, peeking out like a kid caught spying. When the cops waved, she dropped the blinds so fast it looked like a cartoon gag. I thought that'd be the end of it. I was wrong. The next day, Isabella stopped me as I was backing the Ferrari out of my driveway. She stood on the sidewalk, blocking the way like she had legal authority to. "Mr. Adams," she began, "I just want you to know that some residents are uncomfortable with the attention your car brings. We don't want Pinehurst to turn into a racetrack or a social media circus." "Understood," I said calmly. "I'm not racing anyone. Just heading out for groceries." She gave a tight smile. "Good. And one more thing. Hunter's been going through a hard time lately. Perhaps as a kind gesture you could let him take the car for a short drive, just to lift his spirits." I blinked, unsure if she was serious. "You're joking, right?" Her smile didn't falter. "It's just a drive around the block. Think of it as community goodwill." I shook my head. "Ma'am, this car costs more than your entire HOA budget for the year. I can't let anyone without insurance or a license drive it. Especially not someone who called me a show-off yesterday." Her eyes hardened. "That's not very neighborly of you. Neither is filing false police reports," I replied, shifting the car into reverse. She stepped aside slowly, but her glare followed me all the way down the street. That night I found another friendly reminder in my mailbox. All residents must ensure that property and vehicle appearances do not create socioeconomic imbalances within the neighborhood. Failure to maintain community harmony could result in fines. No signature this time, but the paper smelled faintly of her perfume. The more I ignored Isabella, the more determined she became. Within a week, I'd received 3 noise complaints, all at times I wasn't even home, 2 warnings for non-regulation lighting, and 1 ridiculous accusation that the reflection of my car's hood had momentarily blinded a cyclist. Meanwhile, Hunter's behavior got worse. I caught him loitering near my driveway more than once, pretending to take selfies but clearly trying to film my car. One morning, I overheard him yelling from his porch. He thinks he's better than us. Just because he's got money doesn't mean he belongs here. I ignored him, though. Every bone in my body wanted to respond. The truth is, I'd dealt with people like this my whole life. People who believed success was luck, not effort. People who thought the world owed them something because they'd never learned to earn it. Still, something about Isabella's tone, that calm, passive-aggressive sweetness masking venom, started to wear on me. I knew a storm was coming. I could feel it. Every HOA drama starts small, a noise complaint here, a fine there, until one side decides to make it personal. And judging by the way Isabella's eyes lingered on the Ferrari every time she passed by, this was no longer about community harmony. It was about control, pride, and humiliation. She couldn't stand that someone younger, newer, and completely outside her authority had something she couldn't regulate or take, so she'd find another way to punish me, and when she did, I'd be ready. Because I wasn't just another homeowner. I was Kevin Adams, the man who built systems that could track billions of data points in real time. And soon enough, I'd use that same precision to turn Isabella's entire power trip into a documented, legal, HOA-approved disaster. 2 mornings later, I was halfway through my first cup of coffee when I saw them 2 police cruisers parked by the curb lights flashing lazily like this was a social call. My stomach sank, but I wasn't surprised. If there's one thing I've learned about HOA presidents, it's that they don't stop at words. They escalate. I stepped outside calmly. The older officer adjusted his belt, nodded politely. "Morning, sir. You Mr. Adams?" "Yes," I said, glancing past him toward the row of trimmed hedges where a familiar beige silhouette was peeking out Isabella Jones. She pretended to water a bush that was clearly fake. The younger cop cleared his throat. "We got a call from a resident about a possible case of, rapid, unexplained wealth acquisition." I almost spat out my coffee. "You mean, because I bought a car?" He shifted awkwardly. "Apparently, the resident was concerned you might be involved in fraud or some kind of tech scheme." Behind him, I saw Isabella watching, eagerly pretending to be concerned, like she was doing the neighborhood a favor. I forced a smile. "Well, I'm happy to clear that up." 10 minutes later, we were sitting in my home office. I showed them everything: tax documents, company registration, sale agreements, even the press release announcing the acquisition of my startup. The older officer looked impressed. "Wow," he said, scanning the headline. "So you're that Kevin Adams, the software guy who built Syntrace." "That's me," I said, sipping my coffee. "Guess I didn't expect to be investigated for being employed." He chuckled. "Don't worry, you're clean. Happens more often than you'd think, nosy neighbors and all." The younger cop added, "Your Ferrari's gorgeous, by the way. Mind if I take a picture for my kid?" "Go ahead," I said. As they walked out, I could see Isabella's front blinds twitching like she was fighting the urge to step outside. The officers nodded to her politely before getting into their car. One even called out, "Everything checks out, ma'am. Just a successful guy enjoying his car." Isabella's face turned to stone. Hunter, who had been slouched on their porch, let out a frustrated groan. "Mom, you embarrassed us again," he shouted, storming back into their house. The entire cul-de-sac heard it. I didn't even try to hide my smirk, but I should have known that humiliation only makes a Karen double down. The next day, an email arrived from the HOA office, urgent community notice. Subject: excessive display of wealth and its effect on neighborhood harmony. As members of Pinehurst Estates, we share responsibility in maintaining an environment of balance, respect, and equality. Residents are reminded that ostentatious items or behaviors can disrupt our communal values and should be managed accordingly. No names, no direct accusation. But the timing couldn't have been clearer if she'd stamped it with, "From Isabella's ego with love." I ignored it. I'd learned long ago that you can't reason with people who see other people's success as a personal insult. But Isabella wasn't done. Later that week, as I was pulling into my driveway, she appeared again, this time with a polite smile and a clipboard, her favorite weapon. "Mr. Adams," she began sweetly, "we need to talk about your car's impact on the neighborhood aesthetic." "My car's impact," I repeated, amused. "Yes," she said. "The reflective paint and loud engine have caused emotional disturbance. We've received 3 complaints." I raised an eyebrow. "From who? You, your son, and your mirror?" Her smile didn't waver. "It's not personal. I just want to preserve peace." "By what banning joy?" She exhaled sharply through her nose. "We simply ask that you be more considerate. Maybe park it in your garage at all times? Out of sight." "That's funny," I said, crossing my arms. "Because when you leave your HOA SUV in front of my lawn for hours, I don't file a complaint. I just live my life." Her eyes darkened. "Don't be difficult, Mr. Adams. The HOA can make things unpleasant." I leaned forward, slightly smiling. "Is that a threat?" Her lips twitched. "A reminder." And with that, she turned and walked away, Hunter lurking behind her, grinning like he'd just watched his mom pick a fight on his behalf. That evening, while I was working in my garage, I heard shouting from across the street. Hunter's voice. Loud. Angry. "He gets to drive that while I'm stuck here. You said you'd fix it, Mom." I peeked through the blinds. Isabella stood on her porch, hands on her hips, her tone sharp but trembling. "Hunter, stop shouting. It's not about the car." "Yes, it is," he screamed. "He doesn't deserve it. He thinks he's better than us." He threw his gaming controller at the lawn plastic, cracking on concrete. For a moment, I almost felt bad for her until I remembered she was the one fueling his resentment. I turned back to my tools, pretending not to hear. But that night I realized I'd underestimated her. At 1:47 p.m., my phone buzzed a security alert from the HOA app. Someone had filed a complaint against me for operating machinery at night. Machinery. I was using a ratchet wrench in my closed garage. The report came with a time-stamped image. My garage door slightly opened me inside, taken from across the street. I checked my cameras. Sure enough, Isabella's porch light had flicked on for a few seconds at exactly that time. She'd taken a photo of me. It wasn't about rules anymore. It was about power. And like every control freak who senses they're losing it, she was about to make a fatal mistake. The following Saturday, I received an unexpected knock. I opened the door to see Isabella and Hunter standing there, both trying to look civil. "Good morning," she began. Hunter and I wanted to clear the air. "Is that so?" I asked, crossing my arms. "Yes," she said. "We believe in community spirit, sharing what we have, helping each other. You've been blessed with resources. Maybe there's a way you could help Hunter too." I stayed quiet. She continued. "Perhaps let him experience the Ferrari, just a short drive around the block. Or maybe if you're feeling generous, sell it to him. He could pay 25% of the value. We'd call it a neighborly exchange." Hunter chimed in, smirking. "It's about equality, man. You've had your fun. Spread the wealth." I stared at them for a moment, then burst out laughing. "You're serious," Isabella's smile faltered. "Community means compromise." "No," I said. "Community means respect. And you've shown none." Hunter's face turned red. "You think you're better than us. I think I work harder than you," I shot back. "There's a difference." He took a step forward, fists clenched, but Isabella grabbed his arm. "Hunter, not here." Then she turned to me with that same forced politeness. "You'll regret being so dismissive, Mr. Adams. We're a family here, and families hold each other accountable." "I'm not part of your family," I said, calmly closing the door. As it clicked shut, I heard her mutter through gritted teeth, "We'll see about that." Over the next few days, the HOA machine began to churn at full speed. Anonymous flyers appeared in mailboxes. "Is Pinehurst turning into a show-off's paradise? Luxury cars lower our community value. Let's protect our peace." Each one printed on glossy paper in the exact same font the HOA used for newsletters. Noise complaints piled up, all bogus. Even my trash pickup time somehow became an issue. But here's the thing about fighting tech guys: we don't react. We record. Every word, every threat, every piece of paper, I saved it, because something told me this community crusade wasn't over. And when Isabella finally crossed the line, when her son stopped hiding behind her and acted out on that festering envy, I'd make sure every second of it was caught on camera. Because I wasn't planning to win this fight. I was planning to end it. By the end of that week, the word neighborly had become a weapon. Every email, every bulletin, every smug line Isabella uttered in her HOA posts dripped with fake goodwill. As good neighbors, we must remember humility. A unified community avoids selfishness. Translation: Kevin, tone down your life. I ignored it for a few days. But one thing about people like Isabella, they can't stand being ignored. The less attention you give them, the louder they get. It was a Saturday morning when she finally snapped. I was out front washing my Ferrari quietly. I might add, when I heard heels clicking across my driveway. The sound was sharp, deliberate, like she wanted to announce her arrival. I looked up and saw Isabella, clipboard in hand, as always flanked by Hunter, who carried nothing but attitude. "Morning, Mr. Adams," she began with an artificial smile. "Hope I'm not interrupting your detailing ritual." "Not at all," I said, glancing at the clipboard. "New HOA fines." "Not exactly," she replied, as though the idea delighted her. "I'm here to discuss an opportunity." That word alone made me cautious. "Opportunity, yes," she said, voice honey smooth. "For community engagement." She gestured toward Hunter. "My son has been under a lot of stress lately. College debts, job struggles, the economy. You understand. Seeing your car brought him inspiration. Perhaps you could help him channel that motivation." Hunter grinned. "Like a mentorship. Or maybe let me drive it once." I raised an eyebrow. "Drive it, just around the block," Isabella cut in as if reading from a script. "He's a responsible young man." I looked at Hunter, baggy pants, unshaven, Red Bull in hand. Responsible was not the word that came to mind. "Sorry," I said flatly. "Insurance doesn't allow that. And this car isn't a toy." Isabella's smile twitched. "Of course. I understand. Perhaps then you could donate some funds for his career growth." A gesture of goodwill. We could make it official through the HOA. I blinked. You want me to give your son money through the HOA? It's not about money, she said quickly. It's about inclusion, fairness. We don't want one neighbor's success to create resentment. I couldn't help laughing. You think giving Hunter my car or my cash is going to make him less resentful? Hunter's jaw tightened. You think you're better than me? I sighed. No, but I do think I earned what's mine. That broke her composure. Isabella's voice rose cracking under the polished surface. Mr. Adams, this neighborhood thrives on balance. If you can't show humility, the HOA may need to reevaluate your status here. I leaned against the car, drying the hood slowly. You're threatening me, because I won't donate to your son. Consider it a warning, she said sharply. Hunter muttered under his breath. Rich people think rules don't apply. Funny, I said, meeting his eyes. I could say the same about spoiled kids. He lunged forward a step, but Isabella grabbed his arm. Hunter, back in the house. Now he ripped his arm free, glared at me, then stormed off, muttering, You'll regret this. When he was gone, Isabella turned back, her voice trembling with fury disguised as grace. I tried being kind. But arrogance has consequences, Mr. Adams. I smiled faintly. So does extortion. Her eyes went wide, and for the first time she had no comeback. She spun on her heels and walked away fast, her heels clicking like gunfire. I didn't realize it then, but that moment, that single word extortion, would be the one she'd never forgive me for saying out loud. The next 48 hours were quiet. Too quiet. Then the campaign began. Flyers started showing up in mailboxes, no signature, no proof, but the style was unmistakable. The title read, Luxury doesn't equal character, a concerned resident speaks. It warned residents about newcomers who flaunt wealth without regard for community harmony. A cartoonish Ferrari clip art was printed right in the middle. I collected 3 copies before noon. The paper even smelled like her perfume, that same overpowering jasmine scent she wore to every HOA meeting. Next came the complaints. Car wash runoff, disturbing curb appearance. Loud music from garage, even though I hadn't played any. Improper exterior lighting reflecting off vehicle surfaces. Each one came from different residents, yet all used the same phrasing. Isabella's little army of followers was alive and well, but the funniest part, none of the fines stuck. I read every bylaw, every HOA clause, every section of their handbook. I paid my dues on time, my lawn was regulation height, and my car was street legal. She could flood me with warnings, but they couldn't touch me. And that drove her insane. Late one night, as I was closing the garage, I caught movement on my driveway. At first, I thought it was a cat. Then I heard the soft clink of metal. I froze. On the security monitor, I saw Hunter hoodie pulled tight, crouching near my mailbox. He poured something thick and dark into the grass, then yanked open the box and smashed it shut. The screen flickered as the motion sensor caught him mid-smirk before he sprinted off into the shadows. Unbelievable, I whispered. I called the police, not to arrest him, not yet. I wanted documentation. When the officer arrived, I showed him the footage. He raised an eyebrow. Want to press charges? Not yet, I said. Let's just file a report. Paper trail first. The officer nodded. Smart move. These HOA types, they get real brave when they think they run the law. By morning, the damage was clear. My mailbox was dented and oil streaked across my driveway and front lawn. At 9 a.m., Isabella came marching over, waving a piece of paper. Mr. Adams, we've had multiple residents complain about hazardous substances near your property. You'll need to clean it immediately. I couldn't help smiling. You're right. Fortunately, the culprit was caught on camera. Her face froze. Excuse me, your son, I said. He vandalized my property last night. The police already have the footage. She stammered, That's ridiculous. Hunter would never. I held up my phone, showing her the clip, Hunter's face illuminated clearly by the garage light as he dumped the oil. For a moment, all the color drained from hers. Then she tried to regain control. He was under stress. It was an accident. Accidentally trespassing. Accidentally destroying my mailbox. Her voice cracked. You can't do this. He's just a boy. He's 26. That shut her up. I leaned closer. You've pushed me for weeks. I've stayed calm, polite, and reasonable. But this, I pointed toward the footage, is no longer an HOA issue. It's criminal. She glared at me, but the confidence was gone. You'll regret humiliating us. Funny, I said. That's exactly what your son's about to feel when the police show up again. She turned and stormed off, nearly tripping on her own heels. 2 hours later, she tried damage control. Flyers vanished from mailboxes. HOA threads went quiet. Even Hunter disappeared for a few days. But she couldn't undo what had already been set in motion. The police called back with updates. The vandalism footage had been filed as evidence. Hunter's fingerprints were confirmed from the mailbox dents. Then came the kicker. I found out Isabella had emailed the HOA board claiming I had tampered with my own security footage to frame her son. She even attached screenshots, low-quality edits of the video with timestamps missing. It was sloppy, pathetic even. But what she didn't know was that my cameras had cloud backups, immutable, time-verified, and synced directly with my insurance provider's database. Every second was verifiable in court. I didn't even need to lift a finger. The system did it for me. When the HOA board realized what she'd done using her position to falsify complaints and file false accusations, they panicked. A meeting was called. One that would soon turn from damage control into the beginning of Isabella's downfall. Because while she still believed she was running a neighborhood, I had already built the trap that would expose every lie she'd told. And the next time she tried to threaten me face to face, the police wouldn't just be filing a report, they'd be writing her charges. By the time the HOA board scheduled an emergency meeting, the tension on our street could have been bottled and sold as jet fuel. People were whispering, posting passive-aggressive comments in the neighborhood group, pretending to mind their business while staring from behind curtains. I didn't show up to that meeting. I didn't need to. I'd already put everything in motion. See, I wasn't just some guy with a sports car. Before selling my startup, I'd built software for data integrity and surveillance analytics, the kind used by banks, insurance agencies, even local law enforcement. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same tech I once designed to catch corporate fraud was now going to expose a suburban power trip. The footage of Hunter vandalizing my property was only the first domino. What Isabella didn't realize was that my security setup covered everything: audio, video, timestamps, cloud backups, and a live feed directly stored off-site. Nothing could be deleted. Not by her, not by anyone. That week I quietly compiled a full digital report complete with police filings, HOA complaint records, false citation notices, and video proof of every incident she'd engineered. I didn't threaten her. I didn't argue. I just waited. And sure enough, the next move came faster than I expected. It was a Tuesday morning when my doorbell rang. I opened it to find Isabella and Hunter standing there again. But this time their faces weren't smug. They were flushed tight with panic. "Mr. Adams," she began, "we need to talk about this misunderstanding." I crossed my arms. "The one where your son destroyed my mailbox." Her jaw tensed. "He didn't destroy it. He was helping fix a neighbor's property and accidentally spilled motor oil," I interrupted. On my lawn, Hunter stepped forward, his tone defensive. "You set us up, man. You planted that footage. Everyone knows you're good with computers. You faked the video," I sighed. "So your defense is that I deep-faked you confessing to a crime with your mom's voice in the background." Isabella blinked. When I held up my phone and played the clip crystal clear, courtesy of my garage's directional microphone, Isabella's voice rang out perfectly. "Hunter, hurry up. He's asleep, just pour it and go." Her mouth fell open. "That's taken out of context." "Sure," I said, "because most crimes have excellent context." She realized I wasn't bluffing. Her expression hardened into that trademark HOA steeliness. "You think this makes you untouchable? I am the HOA. I can make your life miserable." "Already did," I replied calmly. "Now it's my turn." And that's when the blue and white patrol car rolled into the cul-de-sac. The timing couldn't have been better. 2 officers stepped out, the same pair from before. The younger one waved at me. "Mr. Adams, we got your follow-up email. You said they might come by." Isabella froze. "You called the police on us." "No," I said with a grin. "I invited them. I wanted witnesses for this conversation." Hunter stammered. "This is harassment. We're the victims." The officer held up a hand. "Ma'am, sir, we've reviewed the evidence. The vandalism, the trespassing, and the verbal threats. You're both being cited for criminal mischief and attempted extortion." "Extortion?" Isabella gasped. "We were asking for fairness, ma'am," the officer said, patiently demanding compensation for emotional distress over a neighbor's car after vandalizing it isn't fairness. It's illegal. Hunter's face went red. "You can't arrest us for talking. Actually," the officer said, opening his citation pad, "we can charge you for admitting to property damage on video." I stood there, arms crossed, letting it all unfold like a perfectly written scene. Isabella tried one last tactic, tears. "Officer, please. This man has been targeting my family. He's manipulative, arrogant, toxic. He made us feel unsafe." The cop looked unimpressed. "Then why are you the one showing up on his lawn in the middle of the night, ma'am?" Her mouth opened, then closed. No words came out. Hunter muttered something about suing me. The officer handed him a summons. Feel free to bring your lawyer after you finish community service. After they left, the neighborhood's group chat lit up like a fireworks show. Screenshots of the police visit spread faster than wildfire. Someone posted a photo of Isabella's driveway with flashing blue lights, captioned HOA Karma Live Edition. For the next few days, she barely left her house. Her once daily HOA memos stopped. The flyers vanished. Hunter's car was gone, probably impounded for evidence. You'd think that would be the end of it. But Isabella wasn't the type to quit quietly. When a person builds their entire identity on control, they'd rather self-destruct than surrender. So she tried one last desperate move. Friday evening, I was in my garage cleaning up when a notification popped up on my phone. Incoming call, Pinehurst HOA office. Curious, I answered. Mr. Adams said, the voice on the line tight and rehearsed. This is the HOA Vice Chair, Mr. Lowell. We've received some troubling accusations from Miss Jones. She claims you've been spying on residents using illegal cameras. I smiled. Oh, you mean the ones the HOA itself approved in the 2022 Surveillance Bylaw, page 47. Section 8. Residents may install private security systems within property lines for personal safety. There was a pause. You have the handbook memorized, only the parts your president conveniently forgets. Lowell cleared his throat. We just need to confirm, did you or did you not post security footage publicly? No, I said. But since Isabella forwarded my footage to half the neighborhood trying to prove I faked it, she technically distributed evidence of a crime, so if anyone violated privacy laws, it's her. Silence. Then a quiet, almost relieved chuckle. Mr. Adams? Would you be available Monday evening? We'd like to hold a special session regarding Miss Jones's conduct. I grinned. Absolutely. I'll bring popcorn. Monday's meeting was a masterpiece of irony. The HOA board sat stiffly around the table, Isabella at the end, jaw tight, pretending confidence. I took a seat opposite her, quiet, composed, and armed with a small flash drive. Lowell began. Miss Jones, Mr. Adams, we've reviewed multiple complaints, both formal and informal. The situation has escalated beyond standard procedure, Isabella interrupted. He's manipulating you. He doctored videos to make us look bad. I didn't even argue. I just slid the flash drive across the table. Play it. On the screen behind them, crystal clear footage appeared Isabella and Hunter dumping oil, whispering, laughing, then bragging about making him pay. The sound captured every word. Gasps filled the room. Lowell paused the clip halfway through and turned slowly to Isabella. Miss Jones, care to explain why your voice is clearly heard here? Her face turned crimson. That's not, he edited it. Lowell raised an eyebrow. Audio verified by police forensic lab timestamp, matched with HOA street cameras. This is authentic. The silence that followed could have crushed glass. Finally, another board member, a woman who'd once been Isabella's biggest supporter, spoke up quietly. You used our HOA authority to harass a homeowner. You falsified reports. You defamed a resident. This is grounds for immediate removal. Isabella's mask cracked. You can't remove me. I built this neighborhood, Lowell sighed. Then you should have protected it better. When he banged the gavel, the decision was unanimous. Isabella Jones removed as HOA president, effective immediately. Hunter, sitting outside in the hallway, shouted something incoherent when he heard the verdict. No one cared. As I stood to leave, Isabella glared at me with pure venom. You think you've won, Mr. Adams? I met her gaze calmly. No, I just stopped losing. That night, the neighborhood was eerily quiet. For the first time since I'd moved in, nobody peeked from their windows when I started the Ferrari. The hum of the engine didn't spark complaint threads or police visits, just silence, and maybe a hint of reluctant respect. I'd expected satisfaction, maybe even triumph, but what I felt was something different, peace. The kind that comes when you stop letting people like Isabella dictate your life. Still, I had one more step left. Because as much as I loved seeing karma at work, I also knew karma worked best when it was documented neatly, legally, and permanently. So I filed one final report: defamation, harassment, and HOA, abuse of authority. It wasn't revenge. It was accountability. And when the court date arrived, I didn't even need to attend. The footage spoke louder than any testimony. By the end of the month, Isabella and Hunter faced charges: Hunter vandalism, trespassing, attempted extortion; Isabella falsifying reports, HOA misconduct, and obstruction. Their punishment, community service, mandatory counseling, and restitution fines that almost matched the cost of repainting my driveway. The last time I saw them, they were scrubbing graffiti off the public park wall. Hunter looked up as I drove past, eyes, tired cheeks flushed. For once, he didn't shout. He just nodded, almost respectfully. Maybe, just maybe, he'd learned something. The following weeks felt surreal. The same neighbors who once side-eyed me from behind their mailboxes now waved as I drove past. The tension that had hung over the cul-de-sac like smog had evaporated. For the first time since I moved to Pinehurst, estate's people greeted me without whispering afterward. But peace never comes without paperwork. A thick white envelope arrived on a Monday morning stamped with the county seal. Inside were the official documents, the court summons for Isabella and Hunter Jones, and a neatly stapled report from the police investigator. The charges were spelled out clearly: vandalism, harassment, false reporting, and attempted extortion. It was poetic. The same woman who used the HOA to terrorize others now had her name printed on an official list of misdemeanors. When the hearing day came, I didn't plan to attend. My lawyer insisted, though, reminding me that nothing silences a manipulator faster than the person they tried to destroy showing up calm and smiling. So I did. The courthouse was small, the kind built more for parking tickets than neighborhood drama, but somehow the entire story of Pinehurst Estates versus Jones turned it into a local spectacle. Reporters showed up probably because someone on the HOA board had leaked it. The headline on a local news site read, "HOA president accused of extortion after Ferrari feud." When Isabella walked in, the cameras clicked like popcorn. She wore her usual beige power suit, but her face was pale and tight. Hunter followed behind her hoodie, pulled up hands stuffed into his pockets, eyes fixed on the floor. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. The judge, a silver-haired woman with the patience of a saint, looked over the case file, then up at Isabella. "Miss Jones, I see here that you filed multiple false reports, tampered with HOA records, and engaged in targeted harassment of your neighbor, Mr. Adams. Would you like to explain?" Isabella clasped her hands. "Your Honor, I was simply protecting the integrity of our community. I feared he was bringing in an atmosphere of excess." "Excess," the judge interrupted. "You mean buying a car?" Isabella hesitated. "It wasn't just the car. It was his attitude." The courtroom chuckled quietly. The judge didn't. "Ma'am, attitude isn't a crime, but vandalism and defamation are." Hunter shifted uncomfortably beside her. "I already said I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't mean to break his mailbox. You poured oil across his lawn and keyed his vehicle," the judge reminded him, reading from the evidence file. "That's not an accident. That's destruction of property." Hunter's mouth opened, but Isabella squeezed his arm. "We're good people, Your Honor. My son just made mistakes. We've been through a lot. Maybe if Mr. Adams hadn't flaunted his wealth, none of this would have happened." The room went silent. The judge set down her pen. "Are you suggesting," she said slowly, "that your neighbor's financial success caused your criminal behavior?" "I'm saying he provoked it," Isabella snapped. That was the moment the last ounce of sympathy in the room evaporated. My lawyer whispered, "She just buried herself." The judge leaned forward. "Miss Jones' envy is not a legal defense. It's a moral failing. And frankly, I'm tired of seeing people who claim to stand for community using that power to punish those who simply worked harder." Isabella looked like she'd been slapped. After reviewing the footage, the judge delivered her ruling with surgical precision. Isabella Jones fined heavily for defamation, false reporting, and HOA misconduct, sentenced to 200 hours of community service and mandatory diversity training. Hunter Jones ordered to pay restitution, 300 hours of labor, cleaning public spaces, and 6 months of counseling for anger and entitlement issues. The final line in the ruling read, "Defendants to refrain from any further contact with plaintiff. HOA privileges suspended indefinitely." In one sentence, her empire was dismantled. The following week, a new HOA president was elected, Lowell, the mild-mannered vice chair who once feared Isabella. His first act as president was simple: no more anonymous complaints. All future reports must include the sender's name and evidence. Half the gossip in the neighborhood disappeared overnight. The other half, it turned into apology casseroles. I'm not kidding. The same residents who'd once believed Isabella's lies started dropping off baked goods and handwritten notes. "Sorry for the misunderstanding. We didn't know she was lying. Love your car. I didn't hold grudges." I thanked them, smiled, and moved on. After all, the best revenge wasn't humiliation, it was normalcy. A month later, as part of their sentencing, Isabella and Hunter began their community service hours. I happened to drive by the local park one Saturday morning and nearly did a double take. There they were. Hunter, wearing an orange vest, was scrubbing graffiti off a concrete wall, earbuds dangling lifelessly as a supervisor barked instructions. A few feet away, Isabella was picking up trash with one of those long grabber sticks, her perfectly manicured nails hidden behind latex gloves. It was surreal. The woman who once lectured me about community pride was now literally cleaning it. I parked across the street for a moment, engine idling quietly. Hunter noticed me first. He froze, straightened, and looked right at me. For a second I expected another glare, another outburst. Instead he gave a small nod, shameful, tired, but sincere. I returned it before driving off. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was growth. Either way, it was the first time I'd seen something human in him. By summer, the story had faded into neighborhood legend. New residents heard whispers about the Ferrari incident, but never the full tale. The HOA became almost pleasant. Meetings were about real issues: landscaping, budgets, street repairs, community picnics instead of personal vendettas. One evening, Lowell stopped by my house holding a folder. "The board wanted to offer you a position as HOA advisor. After what you handled, we could use your insight." I laughed. "Appreciate it, but I've had enough HOA politics for a lifetime." He chuckled. "Can't blame you." He hesitated before adding, "You know, Isabella blames herself now. She's attending those mandatory classes. I heard she's calmer, even humbled." "Good," I said. "Maybe she'll finally learn what community really means." But there was one last piece of poetic closure waiting. 2 weeks later, I received a check in the mail restitution from Hunter, signed in shaky handwriting. Attached was a note on notebook paper: "Mr. Adams, I'm sorry for what I did. Mom and I lost our house. I got a job at a detailing shop. I'm learning things. Maybe one day I'll earn my own car. Thanks for not ruining my life completely." Hunter, I folded the note carefully, smiled, and placed it in my desk drawer. I didn't need the money. The apology was enough. That night I took the Ferrari out for a drive, the same car that had sparked so much chaos and taught so many lessons. As I rolled through the quiet streets of Pinterest, I noticed something new: no eyes peeking from curtains, no judgmental glances, just peace. The streetlights reflected on the hood like tiny gold stars. For the first time, it felt like the neighborhood finally understood what I'd known all along. Pride isn't about what you own. It's about how you carry yourself when others try to take it away. When I got home, I parked the Ferrari, shut the garage door, and looked at the neat rows of houses glowing under the moonlight. Justice had been served, but more importantly, balance had been restored. And as I headed inside, I couldn't help but laugh softly to myself. Because in the end, all it took to defeat an HOA tyrant was the same thing that built my success: patience, precision, and letting the truth do the talking. A month passed, and life in Pinterest Estates finally settled into something that resembled normal. The HOA meetings stopped feeling like courtroom interrogations, and for the first time since moving in, I could step outside without feeling like I was under surveillance. No more anonymous flyers, no more friendly reminders about lawn height or mailbox color. The silence was ironically the sweetest sound in the world. Most people who knew what had happened tried to move on quietly, but the story of Isabella Jones, the once feared HOA queen who fell from grace over a Ferrari, had already become legend. Someone even joked that our street needed a plaque: "Here lies the spirit of Pinterest HOA tyranny defeated by horsepower and common sense." I laughed when I heard that one. Not because it wasn't true, but because it showed something had shifted in the neighborhood's collective soul. For the first time, people weren't afraid of the rules, they were questioning them. They were free again. The Jones house, however, remained a scar on the cul-de-sac. For weeks, the blinds stayed drawn, the lawn went unkempt, and the mailbox leaned crooked, ironic, given how obsessed Isabella once was with appearances. Then one morning, a for sale sign appeared in the yard, planted awkwardly between overgrown bushes. I saw a realtor take photos while Isabella stood by the porch, arms folded tightly, her gaze blank. Hunter wasn't there. I didn't feel triumphant. If anything, I felt resolved. Later that day, I received a letter in the mail with no return address. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper written in tidy, cursive: "Mr. Adams, you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to say this before we leave. I lost myself trying to control everyone around me. I thought power meant stability, that if I could keep everything perfect, nothing could fall apart. But it did. You didn't destroy me. I did that all on my own. Take care of this neighborhood. It deserves someone who actually understands it." Isabella Jones. I read it twice, maybe 3 times, then folded it neatly and tucked it beside Hunter's earlier apology note. I didn't forgive her entirely, but I respected what that letter represented: accountability, something most people never reach. A week later, moving trucks arrived. I watched quietly from my porch as furniture was hauled out, boxes labeled Kitchen Office Hunter's Room. Isabella wore sunglasses the entire time, never looking up, never glancing in my direction. When the final box was loaded, she paused at her front door for a long moment, as if saying goodbye to the kingdom she'd once ruled. Then she got into her car and drove off. No words, no glares, no curtain twitching, just gone. The house sold within a month to a young couple with 2 kids. They planted flowers, painted the shutters navy blue, and laughed freely in the front yard. It was strange how one family's departure made the entire block breathe again. Meanwhile, Hunter kept his word. Every few weeks I'd see him around town working at a local car detailing shop. The first time I pulled in for a wash out of curiosity, he saw me froze mid-polish, then walked over slowly. "Mr. Adams," he said, quieter than I'd ever heard him speak. "Didn't think you'd actually come here." "Why wouldn't I asked. "You do good work." He nodded. "Trying to. I messed up big time, but I'm figuring things out." He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "Still love that Ferrari, though. Haven't seen one like it up close since you poured oil on my lawn," I said, smirking. He laughed awkwardly. "Yeah, guess I earned that." We shook hands, and as I left, he said something that stayed with me. "You know, I used to think people like you just got lucky. But now I get it. You worked for it. Maybe I will too." It was the first honest thing I'd ever heard from him. Over time, the memory of the feud became something between a cautionary tale and a running joke. When new residents moved in, longtime neighbors would whisper, "Don't mess with Kevin." The last person who did ended up cleaning park benches. I didn't mind the reputation. If anything, it bought me peace. The new HOA under President Lowell was transparent, calm, and dare I say it, reasonable. He even started a newsletter titled Community Over Control, which made me laugh out loud the first time I saw it. The board had learned the biggest lesson possible: power means nothing without integrity. One Sunday morning, months after the dust had settled, I sat on my porch with a cup of coffee, watching the sunrise reflect off the Ferrari's hood. It glowed like molten gold in the soft light. For years I thought that car symbolized success, something tangible to prove I'd made it. But now I realized it symbolized something else: freedom. Not from work or stress or responsibility, but from people who think your happiness belongs to them. The peace of the morning was broken only by the sound of my neighbor's sprinkler and the faint laughter of children down the street. The same cul-de-sac that once whispered about me now waved and smiled when I drove by. Sometimes I think back to Isabella's letter. She was right about one thing she didn't lose to me. She lost to herself. Because control, when built on fear, always collapses under its own weight. Before I end this story, I'll tell you something personal. After everything happened, I decided to start something new, not a business, not another startup, but a program. I called it Drive Forward. It offers small mentorship grants to young people trying to build careers, especially those from tough backgrounds. The irony wasn't lost on me. Hunter's bitterness had reminded me how easy it is for young people to feel left behind. If someone had told me that out of an HOA feud and a Ferrari would come a scholarship fund, I'd have laughed. But life's funny like that. Sometimes chaos plants the seed for something better. The first grant recipient was a 21-year-old mechanic's apprentice who'd lost his dad in an accident. When he came by my garage to thank me, he said, "Someday I'll drive something like that Ferrari too." I smiled. Don't just drive it, earn it. That's the part that feels good. A few months later, I got one final surprise. The HOA board sent a formal invitation letter, neatly printed embossed logo, the works. They wanted to recognize me for outstanding community contribution and integrity. It was the first HOA meeting I'd attended since the entire ordeal. When I walked in, everyone clapped. Not in mockery or obligation, but in genuine appreciation. Lowell handed me a framed certificate and said, "Thanks to you, Kevin, we learned what leadership should not look like and what accountability should look like." I accepted it with a grin. Appreciate it. But honestly, I'm just glad I don't get HOA fines for having shiny grass anymore. The room erupted in laughter, and for the first time, I truly felt like I belonged. Later that night, I took one last drive down the quiet streets, wind in my hair engine humming like a heartbeat. As I passed the old Jones house, now freshly painted lights glowing warmly inside, I couldn't help but whisper, "Peace restored." Because that's what karma does. It doesn't always arrive in flames or fury. Sometimes it just shows up quietly, cleans house, and leaves you with stillness. And as I parked the Ferrari in the garage and turned off the ignition, I realized something simple but profound. The best revenge is living well and proving that no one's envy can touch your peace. Jealousy is poison that only hurts the one who drinks it. People will always find reasons to resent your success, your happiness, or your peace, but you can't live your life shrinking to fit their insecurities. Work hard, stay humble, and let time and truth do what they do best, expose lies and reward patience. So if you've ever faced your own HOA Karen or an entitled neighbor who thought your joy was an offense, remember you don't need to fight dirty. Just stand your ground, document everything, and let karma handle the cleanup. Now it's your turn. Drop a comment below. Have you ever dealt with someone like Isabella or Hunter? How did you handle it? And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and join our growing community of real-life HOA warriors and comeback champions. Because in this neighborhood, revenge always parks in the driveway with style.